Good afternoon. My name is Richard Burke. I'm Executive Director of the Western Liberty Network. It's late today, 1:26. We've got a late start on the training today. It's not usual. I apologize for those who may watch this who tried to sign in earlier, but we're going to do a training on how to canvass today, how to do door-to-door canvassing. Before I begin, I want to let people know that they can learn about the Western Liberty Network by going to the website and pointing their browser to www.westernlibertynetwork.org. If you do, you will see this page. And on top here, you will see the topic that we do on Saturday. We do a different topic every Saturday through our Zoom call. And the recordings are on the training page. We have a number of training assets available. If you go to the training page, you scroll down and you'll see some documents. Take a look at the topics that interest you, download them. You'll get a PDF file. These PDF files are designed to be provided with a live in-person training, but they stand up on their own and they provide a lot of good information. Beyond that, the recordings that we do every Saturday are all here on a variety of different topics. Just take a look at what's available and find something, that's interesting to you. Cleon Cox talks about Toastmasters, a great organization to do public speaking. This one's how to do press releases. There's just all kinds of different topics to deal with here, how to debate in informal environments. There's a lot of good training and it's all free. And if you decide that you want to support Western Liberty Network, you can also go to our support page where you can make a one-time contribution or a regular automatic monthly contribution using your credit, debit card, or PayPal account. We love the monthly contributions because that helps us to have a predictable budget, but we will be grateful for any contribution that people will make. And as a 501c3 organization, Western Liberty Network does not endorse or oppose any political candidate, political party, ballot measure, or legislation. And but the people who participate on these calls sometimes do. So the comments of participants in these Zoom calls are entirely their own responsibility and do not necessarily reflect the view of Western Liberty Network. So with that, we're going to go on to how to canvass, going door to door. It's going to be the topic of today. This is really important. Studies have shown, and I've got a list of studies here that you can look at, that going door to door, looking people in the eye and talking to them is the most effective way to get people to do things like simply vote, register to vote, or how to persuade them to vote for or against a ballot measure or for or against a particular candidate. So this is something very much worth doing, is key to grassroots, and is always very, very important. If you decide you're going to canvass, it's always best if you can start in your own neighborhood. If you know your neighbors, it's going to be easier to talk to them. You'll get a faster start and they will know you and be perhaps more likely to let down their guard a little bit and listen to what you have to say. When you're canvassing typically works best between the hours of 9 in the morning. Don't go any later than 9 at night. Typically, I don't like to go any later than 8 at night. By 8 o'clock, 8:30, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty much dead by that point and ready to blob out, but never go past 9 o'clock. And if you're going to be canvassing, try to meet before you begin at a coffee shop or someplace where you can chat, get everyone together. And that is a good chance to sort of assign neighborhoods to people, go over what you're trying to accomplish, go over some suggested ways to approach it, to talk, and just sort of get some camaraderie going, decide when you're going to meet back and have a pizza party when you're done or whatever else you're going to do. It's also very important that when you do canvassing, you can to try and have a list of homes. If you're doing it for a political party or a candidate, they should have what's called a walking list. And that is a list of people in the neighborhoods you're going to walk and canvass in, but it is sorted in the order of the house. Sometimes there's important, valuable information about the people you're going to contact. For example, what their party registration is. I remember I did some canvassing for a candidate named Tim McHenry. I think it was back in '96, and we did some canvassing. And we had a list of Republicans, Democrats, and independents. And one of the things we had is we had different flyers for each one. If we went to a Republican household, we would hand them a flyer that said, for example, Tim McHenry supports school choice because parents, not the state, should direct the course of a child's education. But if we went to a Democratic household, we'd hand them a different flyer, which says that Tim McHenry supports school choice because poor and middle class children should have the same choices that rich families have with regard to choosing the schools that they go to. We had another one for non-affiliated voters that simply talked about the ability of parents to make an independent choice. And that was really effective. If you're going to have campaign literature, if you're going to be running a candidate, it's important to know the people you are going to be talking to and have versions of the flyers, if you have a flyer, have versions of them that are tweaked for the different kinds of people that you're going to talk to along the way. There's a lot of places that recommend that you have a script in place. And by the way, if you have questions or want to interject something while I'm speaking, please feel free to unmute your microphone and interject something. I also have a chat window up if you want to ask a question or make a comment. Go ahead and do it on the chat side. So I want to make sure that this isn't necessarily a one-way lecture, but you know, to continue with what I was talking about, it's important that you know your people, you hand out materials that are relevant to them. Folks like to use a script sometimes. If you are going to use a script as to, you know, how you greet people and what you say to them, it's important to have that designed ahead of time. I generally try not to use scripts because if people use scripts, they tend to sound scripted, and that makes them sound stilted or wooden or inauthentic, and nothing turns off a voter more than that. If you know what you're canvassing for, I'll tell you in just a little bit how to discuss it. Another thing to remember is that you should go in pairs. Never go alone. There are wackos out there, and they just, you don't know when you're going to run into one. And just for security reasons, it would be really good if you had someone going along with you. Also, it's important that you have some kind of a badge or a tag, even if it's a sticker that has your name on it. It doesn't matter what it is, but if you've got like a lanyard with a tag identifying you as working on a campaign or anything like that, it's good to wear those. Because somebody knocks on your door, they say there's something, they don't know, right? You could be an axe murderer trying to get in, who knows? But if you have some kind of a tag or a badge that identifies you clearly or identifies what your purpose is, you are sort of exposing yourself, letting them know who you are, and that helps to bring down some of the walls. Another thing we need to worry about, especially now, is COVID. There are some special precautions that you should use with COVID. And first of all, although it's not a COVID point, when you're going door to door, use the sidewalks or the streets. Do not cut across people's yards. Some people don't care, but a lot of people, particularly those that take pride in their grass and they mow their lawns and they garden, it saves time to cut through the yards, but don't do it. Just even if it's out of your way, you know, just go up sidewalk, walkway, sidewalk up, whatever is the obvious path for you to take. And also remember, when you're talking, don't get involved in long discussions. It's going to be tempting. You're going to find people who disagree with you and they want to debate. Don't debate. If you do, you're going to be spending 20 minutes talking to them That's 20 minutes you could be spending covering more houses. When you're canvassing, it's about coverage. It's about getting to as many houses as you can. Likewise, there are going to be people who agree with you, and they're going to want to talk to somebody who validates their point of view and who agrees with them. Again, do not get, bogged down in those sorts of discussions. You can maybe take their number, have the, give them your number and say, let's get together next week for coffee. But right now, it's not the time. It's very easy to simply, politely say, something, I really would enjoy talking about this with you, but I've got to cover a lot of homes today. So why don't I give you my number? You can call me. And if you want to get together, let's meet for coffee. That's an elegant and polite way to end the conversation. And if you give them your number, probably the odds are 80% that they're never going to call you, but they might. And if they can, who knows, maybe you'll make a friend. Maybe you'll be able to do some work together. Maybe you'll find a new volunteer. It's all very good. But getting back to the COVID for a moment, make sure that you have a mask with you. Put it in your pocket. And when you knock on the door, step back at least 8 feet. And if they ask you to put a mask on, go ahead and put it on. Now, I know a lot of people feel very negatively about masks. I do too. I don't like wearing masks. But if you are on someone else's private property and you've come without an invitation and you're knocking on their door, and they ask you to put on a mask, since it is their property, I think there is an obligation to respect their wishes. And so if they ask you to put on a mask, put it on. They will appreciate it, and that will help to lower a barrier between you and them. And of course, when you're done talking, you can take the mask off right away. When you approach someone, when you knock on their door, just be very simple and straightforward. Hello, my name is Richard Burke, and I'm representing the John Doe for School Board campaign. And I would like to hand you this literature in hopes that you'll vote for John Doe. Thank you very much. Oh, have a nice day. Boom, you're out of there, right? It doesn't have to be a long script. If they ask you a question or two, it's all right. Go ahead and answer it as best you can. They may ask you why I should support this person, and you can give them a quick answer, but say more information is here in the flyer or whatever it is. But make sure that you have a very nice, polite, but very short conversation. And then if there are notes to take, make a little note on your walking sheet. So-and-so is interested in getting involved. So-and-so is an opponent. So-and-so is going to vote for us, and all of that sort of thing. Now, if you're asking people to vote, if you're doing a get out the vote campaign, which is, critical, conservatives are going to have to do that this year in a lot of states, particularly Western states, to make up for registration disadvantages. There are 2 things to remember. When knocking on doors to ask people to get out the vote, the first thing you want to do is tie the act of voting to their personal identity. You can say something like, well, because personal identity, it's like a religion. Somebody's religion is a part of their personal identity. Their political affiliation is part of their personal identity. So you could say, I see here that you're a libertarian voter. I know a lot of good libertarians, and one thing that seems clear to me is, libertarians know that it's important to vote. Do you agree? Just as simple as that. Or I see that you're a Democrat. Democrats have had a lot of voter turnout lately. I guess Democrats understand that it's important to vote. Do you agree? That kind of thing. If you get them to say yes, then you've gotten them to identify the act of voting with their personal identity. Then the second thing is ask them when they're going to vote. You need to have a plan to vote. So you can say, well, that's good. I'm glad you think that voting is important. When are you going to be casting your ballot, or have you cast it already? If they've cast it already, you're done. If they haven't cast it yet, say, well, I don't know. My wife and I were thinking of sitting down next Tuesday and marking it over dinner. That's a plan. Because Stanford University did a study. And if you're canvassing for getting out the vote, if you succeed in tying the act of voting to the personal identity, and if you get them to come up with a plan to vote, they are 72% more likely to vote than if you do not do either of those things. So that is very important. And again, if you're canvassing for a candidate, just simply say, hello, my name is so-and-so. I'm here representing the such and such campaign. And I'd like to give you this information and hope you will support the campaign. Thank you. If they want to shake hands, shake hands. That's all very good. And then just move on to the next house. Be careful of what you say when you approach homes. If you're going to make a joke or a comment about how messy their yard is or anything like that, because a lot of homes have smart doorbells. They've got cameras on the doorbells and they have microphones. In many cases, those microphones are very sensitive and they can hear you if they look over, if they're looking live. If they look at recordings, digital recordings, they'll be able to tell, what you're saying. So be very careful of what you say when you approach somebody's home or walk away from somebody's home. And again, with smart doorbells, that's another reason to make sure that you don't cut across yards or, rock gardens or driveways, because they'll be able to see you doing that. And if they look at the recording, they'll also be able to see you doing that. And, you don't want them out there alienated because you didn't respect their property or telling their neighbors what they did, especially if you trip over a flower or something. That happens sometimes. They trip over something or, a little garden gnome, knock it over, then you got to fix it. And it's just not good stuff. So those are some basics regarding the how to canvass, what to have on hand. Make sure when you canvass that you're dressed appropriately. Some people miss this. I've seen women start canvassing in heels, and that doesn't last very long. I've never worn heels, but and thank God for that, right? But after a little while, that's going to be really uncomfortable. If it's raining, that's another story. Make sure that you have footwear that is comfortable, suitable for walking and canvassing. Make sure you are dressed warmly enough, or if it's summer, make sure you're dressed. Make sure you're dressed for the weather. And if you are walking in the rain, make sure that if you have materials, you have them in a plastic waterproof bag. If you need an umbrella, make sure you have an umbrella. So, just be ready for the elements that you have. It's good to bring a bottle of water. If you have a little backpack or something, have a bottle of water, maybe a sandwich or a candy bar. If you get hungry, those kind of things. And if you follow these things, if you follow these instructions, you're going to have a lot of luck in canvassing. You're going to meet people. You're going to network. You're going to find people who believe the way you do. You're going to be able to identify people who oppose what you believe in. You're going to get practice talking to people. And, it's a little awkward to get started if you've never done it before, or if you haven't done it in a long time. But I encourage people to remember this. You are not imposing. You are not imposing. You're not asking for money, and you're not asking anyone to donate their time other than the time that it takes to talk to you on their doorstep. You are offering them information which will enable them to use their franchise and exercise their political power at the ballot box. That is encouraging them and empowering them to exercise the privilege of voting or taking part in political activity, which our founding fathers and founding mothers have fought and died for. So we're really doing them a favor. So be comfortable with it, have fun with it. And when you are dealing with people, make sure that if something happens that's unpleasant, do not take it personally. There will be people who slam their door in your face. There will be people who tell you to stop bothering them and go away. There will be people who disagree with your politics and will call you a fascist or something equally vile. But remember, these people are just reacting out of their own prejudices. They don't know you. They know nothing about you. They don't know your character. They don't know anything. And so it's important when one of these things happens to not take it personally. If you take it personally, it's going to, first of all, there's no point because they don't really know you, but it will serve to give them power, because you will feel more inhibited. Because you've taken it personally, you'll feel more inhibited when you approach the next door and the next door. That's going to slow you down. That's going to make you feel inhibited, and it's going to make you less effective. Don't take it personally when these things happen, because it's not about you. It's about them, their temperament, and their prejudices. It's not about you. So anyway, those are the basics of canvassing. I'm going to talk about laws related to canvassing. Are there any questions or comments so far? And again, there are 2 people on the call live today, so if you want to turn off the microphone, that's okay. Okay, I don't see any comments. So I'm going to begin with the second part of this. And the second part of this is about laws related to the act of canvassing. The first question a lot of people ask is political canvassing soliciting? The answer is no. I've got here a nice quote. The First Amendment protects non-commercial speech. This includes discourse that does more than inform private economic decisions and provide information about the characteristics of costs of goods and services. Political speech is also a part of non-commercial speech. So if you are not selling, you are not asking for money, you are not soliciting. Under the law, field canvassers are legally allowed to be on private property and knock on doors. This includes homes or neighborhoods that have signs that say no soliciting. However, if there is a sign that says no canvassers, no trespassing, then you do not have the right to knock on that door. So if you see no soliciting, it's okay. If you see no canvassers, no political visitors, or no trespassing, then you do not have the right to knock on that door. Also, you have the legal right to offer campaign literature to voters and supporters. Political canvassers are legally permitted to knock on doors, interact with voters, and distribute literature without any kind of solicitor permit. Related to that, you are not required to give prior notice before canvassing neighborhoods, and that the police cannot stop you from doing these things. Sometimes folks have called the police, especially if they're, don't agree with you ideologically and they're trying to get in your hair. They will call the police, and the police will sometimes ask if you have a permit to solicit. And again, one is not required to solicit. You don't need a solicitor's permit because you are not soliciting, you are not asking for money, and your actions are protected under the First Amendment. And also, the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that municipalities cannot restrict canvassing between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. on all 7 days of the week. So you absolutely have the right to canvass. So the next question is, when is it illegal to canvass? Again, volunteers are restricted from canvassing if non-commercial advocates are added to the list of no peddlers or no solicitors or no trespassing by a town council. A town council has to do this. Among others, Kansas, well, this doesn't really relate to us. California, Kansas, and Louisiana include religious and political canvassers in their list of no solicitors. So, we're not in any of those states, so that doesn't really make a difference. You are entitled to the right to go on to private property, but only until you are asked to leave. Once you are asked to leave by the owner of the property you are on, you must leave. Otherwise, it is regarded as trespassing. Also, submitting false registrations is a felony. I don't think that's going to be an issue for anyone who's watching this live or watching this in the recording. But if you submit a registration with a false name, this actually happens when people are trying to register voters. If they're being paid or evaluated based on the number of registrations they have, and they just register the names of people who are on there, it's a felony. Again, I don't think that's a problem with anyone who would be watching this effort, but it is worth mentioning. Also, if somebody is not home, you can leave the literature. You can leave it, maybe stick a corner of it under a mat, curl it up, and stick it between the door and the door jamb. If there's a little space in the door, you can slide it in the door. If there's a chain link fence, you can curl it up and stick it in the chain link fence. You can do that. You can't just casually throw it on the ground. That could be regarded as littering. But one thing you cannot do is you cannot leave it in the mailbox. If you leave it in the mailbox, that is a crime and you can be prosecuted for that. So if you decide to leave literature, make sure that you are not putting it in the mailbox. Let's see, political leaflet rules. Studies have shown that a 3 to 10 minute interaction, although I think 10 minutes is too long if you're trying to simply canvass a neighborhood, but a 3 to 10 minute interaction between volunteers and voters increases the chances of persuasion. So that's very important. And I think we covered that. So anyway, those are some tips related to how to, here's a question from Lori. What about leaving materials in a paper box? You can do that. That's fine if there's a box that happens to be there, or if you have one with you, go ahead and do that. Just don't throw it down on the ground. One, it could be regarded as littering, as I mentioned before, but two, it could simply get blown away and then it's wasted literature. So sure, go ahead and leave it on the box. So anyhow, those are some basic guidelines about how to canvass and some other information about laws relating to canvassing. Are there any questions today?
Yeah, Richard, this is Janaea. So I was curious, the studies that you mentioned at the beginning of the presentations, will those be available on the WLN website?
Eventually, yes. I've got a bunch of materials. You'll notice on the training page, I've got materials where I've got a recording, and a lot of times there are links for more information. Click here. So I'm going to have to distill that. This recording will be up no later than Tuesday, but the links will be up after that. I'm also, until then, what I'll do is I'll post these PDFs that I have, and links to the studies are provided in those PDFs. They're pretty good. So anyway, it's just good information. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. It's nice to see you.
Richard?
Yes, Lori.
I have a question. In Yamhill County, 2 commissioners are facing recalls, and they've had petition gatherers go into people's funerals, funeral parlors, to solicit. Now, is there any law covered by that?
Well, funeral parlors are, they are private property. And if they allow them to come in, they can come in. Superseding that might be any contract that they have with the people that have the funeral. If it is a rental contract and the rental, the hall is being rented for funeral services, then the renter will typically have control over it and can ask them to leave. I think, as you probably do, that gathering signatures at a funeral is an extremely poor taste. My guess is that in the long run, it will not help any campaigns that use tactics like that. But if there's a rental agreement where they are renting the hall, they have the power to ask them to leave. And if they don't leave, you can call the police, because that would be a trespassing.
That's extremely poor taste.
Yeah. Now, bear in mind, I need to say this for legal reasons. I'm not an attorney.
Right.
And nothing that I say in this presentation is meant to be construed as legal advice, but that represents my best understanding of the law. Okay.
All righty.
Are there any other questions? Okay. I like to get folks out of the training, in a timely manner, and we've done a pretty brisk job here. So I want to thank you for participating. God bless. And again, if you would like to know more, go to the westernlibertynetwork.org website. Within the next week, there's going to be information on the website about our next training and also about the February 5th conference that we have, our annual conference that'll be at the Hilton Hotel in Vancouver, Washington. So stay tuned. And until then, I hope to see you and whoever's watching this recording at next Saturday's 1 o'clock WLN Zoom session. Thank you very much.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.